Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Blake here from ChessPathways.com, and today I have a game to show you that I played against one of my students, and I think it's a really good game because a lot of players think that maybe losing one pawn isn't so big of a deal. Maybe some more advanced players think that when you're up a pawn, the best way to convert it is to trade everything off and win the king and pawn endgame, and that can be true. But very often when you're up a pawn, you can use it to get a sizable advantage even in the middle game. And let's go ahead and take a look at what happened in this game and see how that happened. So in this game I had the white pieces. I played the English opening c4. We get this kind of reversed Sicilian. I fianchetto. This is all totally fine. Black kind of challenges the center with d5. Black has this slight space advantage. We kind of get a Sicilian dragon with reversed colors, but of course it's going to be a little bit different. And black probably can't go for a lot of those Yugoslav attack lines that are very, tempo dependent, because they're going to be down a tempo or two compared to if they were white. So we get a kind of fianchetto here from black. I play knight f3. And we develop some pieces. And here was black's really only significant mistake in the early part of this game. Black simply blundered the e5 pawn, played knight f6. Often you can get away with this when there's a fianchetto because you have some counter tactic like knight takes e4 winning a pawn. And then if white takes the knight, then you take the knight and you win your pawn back. But here, of course, there's no pawn for this knight to take. There's no good discovery. And white simply wins a pawn. Now, this is where a lot of players kind of get tripped up. You have this great plan in the middle game, eventually you win material based on it, and now suddenly your whole plan changes to trade everything off and win the king and pawn in game. And again, you can win like that, but that's kind of something nice to have in your back pocket versus your primary, objective in a given position. Here, the bigger thing to notice is we know in the open Sicilian, black has the 2-on-1 in the center in pawns, right? Here it's reversed. White has the 2-on-1 in terms of central pawns, but black has the center for the time being. So after the e5 pawn falls, I have a huge mass of central pawns compared to black, right? Black has no central pawns left. So my plan from here was to kind of steamroll black in the center. Now that doesn't look like it's going to happen in the near future, but let's just take a look at what happens here over the next 10 or so moves. So knight d7, I go ahead and exchange, h3. Black tries to line up on this h-pawn, pretty reasonable. I go ahead and defend it. c6, kind of blunting the bishop, which makes sense. And now come the central pawn. So I played f4 here. And my plan is simply to retreat the bishop and play e4 and d4. And I think it's going to be pretty hard to stop. So h5, bishop g1, rook e8, e4, queen e7, d4, rook d8, queen f3. Black's playing pretty reasonably here. Black has all their pieces on reasonable and active-looking squares, but we see how restricted they suddenly are because I have all these central pawns. So bishop c8, rook c to d1, just stabilizing that center even more. Black played b5, and I thought this was a pretty interesting idea, possibly trying to dislodge this knight, possibly trying to find a more active square for this bishop on b7, just trying to do what black can to put pressure on the center. But of course, once you lose that key central pawn, kind of the pride of your position here, going back to this position when I took the pawn here, if black loses this e5 pawn, that significantly diminishes their influence over the center, and I'm trying to make black pay by taking over the whole center. So again, black activates those pieces, queen f3, bishop c8, rook d1, b5, rook e1, bishop b7, and finally, only with all my pieces in their most optimal position, I start calculating and trying to see if there's some concrete threats I can make with this giant center. And I find an idea here to really undermine the black king side by pushing the e and f pawns. So e5, the knight has to move, knight d7, and now f5. And there's no discovery here on the queen because the bishop's hanging. f6 is already a threat. Black tried bishop h6 to avoid the fork, but now comes kind of the final blow, pawn to e6, and the game is over. Black has no defense against all of white's threats here. I'm threatening to completely rip open the king, threatening to possibly get to some discoveries here on the queen. Black tried f takes, but now comes rook takes, and now g6 falls, and now h5 falls, and white has a winning position. So how did this happen? I really didn't do anything special. I really didn't calculate all that much in this middle game, going all the way back to the position where I won the pawn. Really, all I did is slowly but surely advance my huge mass of central pawns and kind of make their presence felt, and eventually it tore black's position apart. So you want to think about this in your games. Whenever you're up a pawn, that probably means you have some pawn majority somewhere on the board, maybe on the queen side, maybe in the center, maybe on the king side. Maybe you have a chance to turn that extra pawn into a passed pawn and march it and tie up the enemy pieces, guarding it. Always be pursuing some active plan that's actively putting pressure on your opponent, especially when you're up a pawn, and don't just count on being able to trade everything and win the endgame. It's not always that easy, and if that's your only way you can win the game and your opponent's making meaningful moves to improve their pieces, you're probably not going to fare too well. A lot of players get frustrated because they win a pawn, they think the game's going to win itself, and then it doesn't. But if you use the extra pawn to really push for something in the middle game, using your pawn majorities, using your extra pawn wisely, this can be the result. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please make sure you visit chesspathways.com to get signed up there. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds, and I will send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. Also, please hit that like and subscribe button down below on this video. It took me way too long to become a chess master, and I want to help you do it in a fraction of the time. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.